Hello, everyone. Welcome to Knit with Laura and Lola, number 57. I am Laura Nelkin. I'm a knitwear designer. I live in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes, and I am joined by my alter ego, Lola. Lola's a little bit spicier than I am. I'm a little bit more serious, try to get stuff done. So she and I together will be entertaining you for about the next hour. I'm starting to think of these lives as like my monthly therapy session. Like I basically kind of prepare a little bit and then I get to talk for an hour. I'll be talking about my knitting. I'll be talking a little bit about my feelings about my knitting. I'm going to be sharing how to make an I-cord tool with you, which is a tool that allows you to make a 3-stitch I-cord. I will be talking about Knit for Food in detail. I've got some exciting stuff to share about Knit for Food. And I'll talk about like what I've been eating and watching and sewing. That's been pretty fun in the last month since we talked last. So I know that some of you are watching this live and you are chatting away in the chat thread as I am talking, and some of you are watching this later. So I do my darndest to not read the chat thread while I am talking to you. So if any questions come up, I think it's important for me to tell you now that if you're watching now, all of the links for everything that I talk about will be posted after the live is over. And if you're watching this later on, those links are already in the show notes. So anything I talk about, if you're like, well, where do you get that latch hook? Or what's the resource for the place you talked about that has ideas for making things with I-cord, that will all be below in the show notes. If you're watching now, just wait till the end. I would say like a half hour after I'm over, that will all be up. I have them all ready to post. Sometimes I have to like run and go to the bathroom when I'm done with one of these, and then I'm like, oh, I need to post the information. So give me a little time to do that. Without further ado, the first thing I always tell you about at the beginning of a live is what I'm wearing. Because if you're somebody who's watching and you haven't watched me before and you're not as familiar with my designs, it's typically a question that'll come up pretty quickly. So I am wearing Bling Tee, and that came out last summer. There's a tank top version of Bling Tee, there's a short sleeve version of Bling Tee, and there's a long sleeve version of Bling Tee. And there are kits in my shop. We are about to restock some of the newer colors that sold out in January. The box came with all of the yarn, but we're not allowed to do that until we finish packing up all of March's Lola's Choice kits, which I'll tell you about a bit more in a few minutes. And then I am wearing Cowlstruck, and Cowlstruck I designed last September for the Leading Men Fiber Arts Retreat. It is definitely one of my most worn cowls this fall, I would say, and I love how the colors go with my Bling Tee, so I tend to wear them a lot together. And then when Max and I pulled up the Knit for Food screen, I realized that what I was wearing like coordinated with those colors so beautifully. And I promise I didn't plan that, but I'm happy with how well coordinated that all looks. I really do like when colors kind of zhuzh and play well together. You might be wondering what is behind me, and Goldie is wearing a new yet to be named side to side sweater. Some of you might notice that that stitch looks somewhat familiar to you. It is the stitch that I used in Undulating Waves a gazillion years ago. It is the lace stitch that when I am 107 and my girl visits me, that's the stitch I'm just going to be able to knit with my eyes closed and my ears closed. My hands just know that stitch, so I knit a whole sweater in it. Goldie is rocking it for me. We have a photo shoot tomorrow. I'm just going to kind of roll into this sweater since it's something that's just off the needles. I'm working on writing the pattern. It is a challenging pattern to write. Sweater patterns, for me, I really want to make sure that they fit and they're graded correctly. I take that responsibility very seriously over a large number of sizes, so they do not happen quickly for me. I am not a designer that can crank out more than like 1 or 2 sweater patterns in a year. So this is going to be one of them. And I figured out, I think, Max, was it when I had COVID? I was like in a COVID fog, and I was like, I think I understand how to make a long sleeve, a short sleeve, and a cap sleeve just by changing the row you start on the sleeve. And I like did all this crazy math. And then for 2 weeks after that, I was like, what the hell did I do? I do not understand this math. And I got like stuck for a little while, but I am back on track with her. She is looking fine. That patterns, I'm up to like figuring out the math on the neckline for all of the sizes, so I'm working my way across the sweater. But the other thing I'm working for with it is finding a yarn that is, this is DK weight Cautiva from Wool Dreamers, and I'm working on finding a yarn that's like a silk linen DK, and I've got a few options out there. I was able to get gauge with Lina from Sandness Garn, and that's like this green right up here. And then this down here, which is clearly a color I really, really love, is Queen City Yarns Coleman that I think I got this last spring when I was at a retreat. And I like it, but the gauge is a little bit loose and I need to try it just going down one more needle size. Because it's silk linen, it's really gonna grow. So I think that if I go down one more needle, that's just gonna give like a little bit more density to the fabric so that it kind of maintains its structure a little bit. And then I'm just like jumping right in. I got a new yarn from Diana Dye. I don't know when I would say Diana. And this is called TL Prime S, and it's a 65% Tussa silk and 35% linen. I love this color. It's called Saltillo. And I think it's going to be a little bit too light for this design, but I do think it would make an absolutely freaking gorgeous summer sweater. So I might see if I can make it work for just like the cap sleeve version, because I really, also a color I really like. This is like a little bit maybe rosier than the caramel bling tea, but it's definitely like in my wheelhouse of colors that I wear a lot. So love very, very much. That's what I'm thinking about. I don't know when it'll be out. Somewhere in my brain in January, I thought it would be out at some point in March, and that is a dream, but maybe by the end of March, we'll be into test knitting. So maybe like May is a possibility. That would be my goal, to have the pattern ready for test knitting by the end of March. I will be honest with you and tell you that Knit for Food is my favorite time of year, and it is also a time of year that is hard to get other projects done outside of like club stuff that I have to get done, and that stuff takes priority over sweater patterns because they're kind of my extras. Like sweaters, as much as I love to design them and as much as I love to knit them, they don't sell for me the way that other things do. So sometimes I'm thinking maybe I should just like design a sweater for me, and then I don't have to worry about grading it. I don't have to worry about yardage and getting all of that right. I can just kind of skip the math part and have the knitting joy part, but we'll see about that. So we're going to work on a name for that, just so you know that that is on the docket of things to think about. So that's one thing I've been knitting. I like to talk about my knitting first. You all have been knitting up a storm in the first quarter knit along in my Ravelry group. So the first quarter knit along is a knit along of all of my designs that takes place in January, February, and March. We are just towards the end of February. There are 436 projects registered in the knit along, and 216 of them are finished. So almost finished, almost, I got it. Max just gave me the thumbs up, which means he's leaving and we're good. So if anything goes wrong, we're screwed. Thanks, Max. He's out. So that means almost 50% of your projects that you've cast on for the knit along are done. It is a great way to get some of your older projects off of your needles and get ready for new things coming down the pike. If you take a picture of what you're working on and post it weekly, you can win a prize. And then at the end, everybody who has finished a project will be eligible for a grand prize. And then there's an extra special contest that not that many people have entered called the Fab Four, where you have to finish 4 projects. And that is all explained in the knit along. I'll definitely give you a link for that. But since we're not going to have another live until the end of March, I wanted to show you the prizes for March because they're great. And I think a lot of you are going to want to get involved because we've got 4 bags that I bought you for the month March weekly prizes. So every week you'll get your choice of one of these bags, and then as they're chosen, that bag will be sent to the winner, and then 3 bags will be left, and then 2 bags will be left. They are all handmade by different people. I'll give you all the details about them when I post those prizes, and I'll also give you details about them in my newsletter. So that's kind of to get you excited for the March prizes. They are pretty spectacular bags. Everybody's eligible, including myself. I'll be entering a few projects in March because I really want to win that crossbody bag that Lisa Lang made. Lisa, it is so nice, and I'm a little bummed I committed it to the giveaway, but I think a knitter can never have too many bags. I'm going to show you a bag that I made in a little bit that I am pretty excited about. That green bag is pretty fabulous. I'll give you all the information. Maureen, I just looked at the comments like a bad person. In my newsletter and then in the Ravelry group on March 1st. So look for that. In terms of what's off my needles besides the sweater that has not had a name, I'm thinking about something that has to do with waves for it. So when I was pregnant with my daughter, we were trying to think of a name for her, as parents who are pregnant do. And I had met a girl when I was on Grateful Dead tour, just when I was 17 or 18, and her name was Malia. And I swear I remember her telling me that it meant the crest of a wave right before it crashes in Hawaii. And I was like, I love that so much. I'm going to name my daughter Malia. We all know that Barack Obama has a daughter named Malia. And that was the first time I had heard it outside of me hearing it and wanting to name my daughter that. And then when we kind of did research, we found out it did not mean the crest of a wave right before it crashes. And that it also meant Mary in Hawaiian, which is great. But since I'm of Jewish descent, that didn't make perfect sense for me to do. So we did not name Bella Malia, but I did look up the Hawaiian word for crest of a wave right before it crashes, and it is kuanalu. And I don't think I'm going to name this kuanalu because I'm not Hawaiian and I've never been to Hawaii, and it just doesn't totally make sense. But it gives you an idea of what the naming process for a pattern looks like. I throw a lot of darts. There was no kuanalu on Ravelry, so that's the thing I always have to do is look and see, does that pattern name already exist? Other things that are off my needles are a DK weight version of the Novice jacket that will be out in March. We are almost at the end of tech editing on that little sucker, and she's pretty. We're photo shooting her tomorrow. I knit her in Kelborn Woolen Scout, and it's something that y'all had been asking me to do for a while, was take Novice jacket and make it regauge it in DK weight. It was surprisingly challenging. We wrote the pattern for 2 different lengths. It's great, almost done. Other things off my needles are March's Lola's Choice kit. I also have been knitting step outs for the video. There are many step outs. I will tell you that I took that concept that I've been playing with Stitch Saver, both with provisional cast-ons and with what I call Lola's pickup line, where I use Stitch Saver at the edge of something when you need to pick up stitches later, and used both of those techniques in the March's Lola's Choice design. One of my testers, Lois, who tested it, has already knit 5 versions of them. She liked knitting it so much, which is an honor, Lois. So if that isn't enough of a tease, I don't know what is. The other thing that's off my needles is an ultimate hat, which I showed in an Instagram post the other day. I kind of showed how I do this bind off so that the color work is completely hidden on the inside of the hat that gives you a double brim. There are kits for this in my shop in the original colorway. I am working on getting more kits. I think I'm going to do one more version of Ultimate Hat in more like a greens, browns story, something that goes very well with what I'm wearing right now, something like that. And those will be out kind of, I would say, probably early summer, midsummer to have like in stock for fall. This has been the Ultimate Hat has been my most worn hat since I designed it in September. I feel like I added some really good kind of basics to my wardrobe this year, which is always my goal with design, is to design things that I want to wear and wear a lot. So on my needles, I've got the first N Club project. I've been knitting just a little bit on it every night because it is just like a smooth, soothing, gorgeous knit. I need to kind of pick up how much I'm knitting on it. I got distracted with step outs for Lola's Choice. Those kits will ship at the end of March and we'll have our reveal mid-April. So I've got a little bit of time. I'm not super stressed out yet, but I'll get stressed out at some point soon. Let's see what else. Oh, and I've got my concept for the Lola's Choice for May kit, and I'm thinking I'm going to try to do something that you could do with an I-cord tool if you have an I-cord tool on hand or you want to make one. I've been getting a bunch of people asking if I would do that. So I hear you, and I think that's a great idea for May's Lola's Choice. But I'm not telling you what it is. Probably a thong or 3 that you can put together into a bikini for summer in a yarn that's really, really droopy. When it gets wet, I got your back, don't worry. And I'm also thinking about doing either Bandola, which was January's Lola's Choice kit, or Nice, which was like a nice little kind of kerchief scarf in a summer weight yarn for me. So I've got that kind of in my mind that I know I would love to have that. I'm already kind of thinking ahead to like, what do I want for spring, summer wardrobe to have kind of some fresh accessories? Because I feel like if I want those, you want those too. So that's like my knitting kind of quick, because I want to get into this I-cord tool and show you what I have been up to. And what I'm going to do for the I-cord tools, I'm sure some of you have no idea what I'm talking about, so I've got one to demo doing I-cord for you. I'm going to show you the I-cord tools that I purchased that other people have made. I'm going to show you the I-cord tools that I made. I am going to show you how to make an I-cord tool, how to choose latch hooks so that you get the right size latch hook that you enjoy, and kind of go through all the steps. And then towards the end of this, I will teach you how to start an I-cord and then how to finish an I-cord with the tool, because I know that is stumping a few of you. And I think what I'll do for this live, which I don't normally do for lives, is I'll try to timestamp a little bit. So if you're watching this later and you just want to jump ahead to this I-cord section, you can go ahead and do that. Or if you are just coming to this and you want to watch the I-cord section, you can jump right ahead and get to that. So I just saw somebody said they have their Lucid. That was fun. And the Lucid and the I-cord are similar but different, right? So Maureen, my clock does not have 30 hours in a day, but I am not getting pattern writing done right now. So, something is suffering for sure. So if you have any questions, I just saw 1 or 2 come up in the comments. Let's ask them at the end, because I'm happy to answer them once we kind of get through content, but I'm jumping right into I-cords now. So quick origin story for the I-cord tool. And let me go to the overhead camera so you can kind of see the I-cord tools that I've been making. And I think I'll just make I-cord while I tell you this origin story. So back in November, it was late at night. It was probably 10:30 or 11. I was scrolling the Instagram, as one does, and I saw a reel of a tool that had 3 latch hooks and like a wood handle, and the person's hands were making I-cord with the tool just like I am right now. And I was like, what is that? What is that called? And it didn't have a name. And so I reposted the video and asked people, what's it called? What is it? Where do I get one? I'm so intrigued. And then a few people started making them. And Max and I talked about it for a hot minute. Like, is this the thing we want to make and sell? And we both were like, no, let's let other people do that. We're not manufacturers. I'm a knitwear designer. We make videos and teach people. So sometimes we have to remind ourselves of that. So within, like, I would say a few weeks, there were a few I-cord tools out on the market. There was the Cordsmith from Autumn at Size Inclusive Collective. And I already showed these to you in my last live. It's got a nice big plastic handle. You can really hold on to it. It's got what I understand to be standard gauge latch hooks on it. And it is smooth and well designed. It works really fabulously from like smaller gauge yarns up through medium gauge yarns. And then I got this gorgeous latch hook sent to me pretty quickly from Celeste at Cranky Spinster. And this one right here is made with, I would call these like, let's see, maybe like a fine gauge latch hook. And she did this really cool angling thing so that the I-cord yarn just kind of flies off of them. But I find it works better with sock weight or lace weight yarn, and not so much sport weight, okay too. But like when you get into DK weight and worsted, it gets kind of caught up in the needles, but it does really beautifully with finer gauge yarns. And it's so beautiful to look at. And then I did also find this other one. This one is made by, let me just look up her name so I don't forget. I can look on the back. This is Twin Mommy Creations. I found this one. Someone I think sent me the link to her and I checked her out. I like it. It also uses those fine gauge latches, and I love the way that they are covered with the leather right there and the magnet. But I also find that they're not quite long enough, so you can see that they don't have much flex to them. So it's a little bit harder to do the I-cord with. You can see on both of these that there's a little bit of flex to the needles, and it makes it a little bit easier to work with them. So that's kind of the origin story of the I-cord tool. And then what happened was when I was sick in January, I was on the internet, as one is, and YouTube suggested that I would like a video from Nimble Needles, who made his own 3-stitch I-cord tool with Sculpey or Fimo, which is a polymer clay, and some latch hooks that he found, where he found latch hooks that had a handle, and he like cut off the handle. And I was like, I know I can use machine latch hooks to make these. So I started ordering latch hooks, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say I have like 200 latch hooks that weren't quite the right latch hook because I didn't totally know what I was purchasing. So first I bought some fine gauge. Let me kind of get them underneath here to show you the ones that I have that work well. So these guys right here, I think this is the first one I made, and these are a fine gauge latch hook, or what I'm understanding to be a fine gauge latch hook, and it works really well, but again, for smaller yarns, not so much when I get into DK weight and higher. And then these hooks over here I got, and I think they're more like a bulky weight hook than a standard gauge hook. And I didn't love the action on these as much as I did the finer ones. So I kind of ended up on a mission to find like that in-between size hook that I thought would work really well. And I ordered a bunch of needles from the Knitting Closet in Florida, which is a machine knitting store, and I'll give you that link below after this. And I got all bulky gauge needles, and I was not happy with them. And then I ended up calling them to chat, and what the really nice gentleman on the phone explained, okay, let me back up. I then remembered that I had a knitting machine underneath my bed that was a plastic bed standard gauge Knit King from like the 1970s or 80s. And so I slid it out and I harvested a few latch hooks from it, and they were perfect and exactly the right size, like exactly what I was looking for. So then I called the Knitting Closet to be like, I want these. And he was like, okay, here's the deal. If a machine says it's 4.5 millimeter or 6.5 millimeter or 9 millimeter, that's the spacing in between the needles. That's not the size of the hook. And I was like, oh, thank you. Why did it just take me hundreds of needles to figure that out? Because I thought I was buying the size of the hook, not that like measurement in between them. So every machine manufacturer has different needles that have a different size hook to them. So I figured out, okay, I want to look at like the standard gauge Brother Knit King needles for the plastic bed machines, because that's the hook I like. And so I found them, and you can get them from the Knitting Closet. I did find them on Amazon. I'm going to give you links to everything. When I give you those Amazon links, those are affiliate links, but if you want to get Sculpey or Fimo locally and then purchase from Knitting Closet, that's an awesome option. So I like to give options. And if I go underneath the overhead camera again, I basically found a version of the fine gauge hook that I really, really like. And then I found a version of that standard gauge hook that I really like. And you can see when you look underneath right here that I've got like a little base going on right now with a little bit of Sculpey. And what I'm gonna do first is show you how to make that base and then how to build up around it so that you get a handle that's comfortable to hold. And I would say this is gonna be like a little bit like a baking show because I've got step outs, so you're not like watching me do every single step. But the first thing you got to do, people, is you have to say to your husband, hun, where are the bolt cutters? I need to borrow them for a little while. Which, like any good husband, you should have a sinking feeling when your wife asks for the bolt cutters, right? So bolt cutters, you'll use these to cut the machine hook so that you don't have that little, let me see if I can go back to the overhead. You don't have that little loop right there. And I end up cutting them so that they are about like 4 inches long, I would say. So depending on which ones you get, you'll see that some of these are longer and shorter, and that's so that they fit in the machine correctly, right? But you're gonna wanna cut it so it's about 4 inches long when you are done and cut and cut. And I've already cut some of them for you so that I'm not like doing bolt cutter stuff on screen because that's probably sketchy. And then let me see if I can find, the next thing that I will say is when you work with Sculpey or Fimo, which is polymer clay, it needs to be like massaged and warmed up with your hands before you go to really work with it. So the first thing that you want to do is warm it up. And I find the best way to do that is to kind of put it in between my hands and rub it a little bit and rub it a little bit more. I kind of pre-warmed this up a little bit so it wouldn't take as long to do, but it's a pretty important step to make sure that it's pretty warmed up. So I am doing that. I love that you guys are all talking about tools in the chat. Well, this is a good time for me to check the chat while I'm warming up my Fimo. So Sue, I saw Sue back up in the comments said something you want 6 millimeter, not the 9 millimeter, 4.5 millimeter. Yeah, it's like you want the 6.5, but again, that has to do with the distance in between the hooks, not the actual hook size. So I really found that those Brother needles had the hook size that I liked the best. And I've got that all figured out for you. I found the links. I've got like the code for the Knitting Closet. I keep forgetting the name of that store. Okay. So this is not air dry. This is baking clay. So I'll talk about that baking process. So now you can see I got it all warmed up. It was all funky before. And now I'm just going to make kind of like a little, I'm going to call it a rectangle right there. And again, this is like not science. And I'm going to take all 3 of my hooks and line them up next to each other. And they're going to move around a bit. So don't get too crazy at this point trying to make sure that they're all perfectly level, because as I squeeze see what I mean about them just moving around? As I squeeze that clay around them, they're going to move around a bunch. And like clearly I don't want them that far apart from each other. I found that about 1 centimeter apart seemed to work best. You can see they're kind of like lined up pretty nicely there. If I zoom in, let me see. Yeah, I just zoomed in a little bit. That's even better. So you can see that I'm getting them even to each other. I don't try to do that stepping thing that the cranky spinster does. I do not trust myself, but I've got them kind of all lined up. And then I make this kind of triangle where I squeeze it and then I just squoze them too wide. Squoze is a technical term. And then I go like this, and I go like that, and I go like this. And then that's looking pretty nice. And now what I find at this point, if you find that like you've got some weird clay, you can grab the clay tools that you have around from when your kid used to do stuff with clay, or you could use a pencil. All of a sudden, do you see how I squoze that and they got too far apart from each other? Kind of bring them in a little bit. This step, I think, is really important to take time and make sure that you're really happy with how those latch hooks are lining up, because once you go to bake this, they are going to be set into place. And I did one where it like got knocked on my way downstairs, and then it was and I didn't fix it right before it went into the toaster oven, and it was totally janky. So it is worth taking your time with this and making sure, again, that they have about like 1 centimeter in between each hook like that, and that they're all lined up pretty smoothly. It's easy to move them around and get them where you want them. And then once you are happy with it, you'll follow the instructions on your clay. The clay that I used was, I think, 270 degrees for 30 minutes. And I just used my toaster oven. My lovely partner would prefer if I would get a Sculpey only toaster oven and not use our only oven in our house, because y'all know our oven's still broken. So we're in negotiations about a Sculpey oven or not. Supposedly it's absolutely fine to do in your kitchen, but it is like a polymer plastic. So, I don't know. It says non-toxic. That's what I say. So you'll bake this. And then before you go to do the next layer, you want to let it cool completely. So this is a thing I heard about working with Fimo or Sculpey, is if you do a base and kind of build up on it, that is better than kind of like taking all of your clay and glomming it on there. I only did 2 bakes for mine, not 3 bakes, but you could potentially do 3 bakes to really kind of do your decoration on the 3rd bake. So I've already got one right here that is baked and ready to go. So we're going to kind of set this one aside. I will bake it later. I don't know what I'm going to do with that one. Pretty fun. Let's see. And now I'm going to go to my overhead. And the next thing that you're going to do is, I think I'm going to protect my felt and put down just a piece of parchment paper, just in case, so I don't get any Sculpey on anything. The next step you're gonna do is take whatever color you want as your handle. And again, you wanna soften that up. Somebody gonna get me my own bolt cutter for my birthday this year that I don't have to share with anybody. I'm thinking I might ask for my own bolt cutter. That's a thing. I have lots of other tools that are definitely just mine. I see some of you in the comments talking about harvesting needles from your knitting machines. If you do that, make sure that you can get more needles, because you might want to use your knitting machine one day. And I was pretty careful with my Knit King because I don't know how easy it is to get more needles from that. So I really only used 3, and then as soon as I knew they worked, I put the rest away, put them back in the machine, and got some other ones. I want my best friend to get me a bolt cutter, not my honey. think we should all get each other bolt cutters. How's that? Okay, so I've got this all soft, and now I'm gonna squoze it down flat. This is fun, like live crafting. I feel like during the pandemic, people were doing this a lot. Like, join me on Tuesday night and we'll make something. Okay, so now I'm gonna kind of just wrap this around. And this is where things feel potentially, oh, I don't know, like I have no idea what I'm doing, and I am not a big clay worker. So I go like that. Bear with me on this one. And I'm just squozing it. I'm doing a lot of squozing. And technical term again. And you can see I'm kind of building up a handle. What I found when doing this is that you don't need a lot of clay, and it's almost better to do smaller pieces and like get a base and then add more and then get a base and then add more than to start with a really big piece of clay. Because you'll see right here where I'm like really squeezing in here, and it's because I can feel a little air pocket down in there from where I wrapped it around, and I'm trying to like get that out of there and squeeze it and squeeze it and squeeze it and smooth it. You can use tools if you want to, but you can see I'm starting to get like a shape. I'm gonna show you an example of one where Lola went crazy with her Fimo. And so this one, I kept adding clay. I was like, more clay handle. And I ended up with this like giant handle, and it is comfortable. These latch hooks were not latch hooks that I was happy with at all, but they were way too bulky. And the handle is big, and someone with bigger hands than me might be really happy with a handle like this. You can see I made a really nice thumb print right here for my thumb. But I ended up really liking this kind of smaller one. I still make the thumb print. So as I get into this, you'll see that I'm kind of going to be squeezing down and squeezing down. And now it's time to kind of add more Sculpey on top of this now that I kind of have like a base. But I already have one here because cooking show, right? So I worked on this one earlier. It has not been baked yet. You can see my goal is to have somewhere for my thumb to be. So I've kind of got my thumb right there. I would say on this one that I did, I think these needles could have been a little bit shorter. I ended up cutting the next ones I did a little bit shorter. So I think these were like 5 inches total. But once you get a handle that you're happy with, if you want to, you can decorate a little bit. So this is just a piece of like stone granite Sculpey that I rolled out into a tube. And now I am gonna cut tiny little polka dots, and I'm gonna kind of scatter them all over. I really love this Sculpey that it's like stone looking. This is just an X-Acto blade. I know I'm introducing a new tool. And again, I'm not a clay artist, so some of you might end up doing like amazingly gorgeous things, and I can't wait to see what you do. But I'm just gonna take those polka dots and kind of get them in there. I might end up getting just a few more on there later, but kind of decorate it up a little bit as you see fit. I saw a few people talking about putting googly eyes on, and I would be careful if you did that. I'm not sure you can bake a googly eye, so you might have to glue them on after, and they might get in the like that way of being smooth. So sometimes, even though it would be really funny to have a googly on the eye on there, it might not be the thing that you want. So I'm gonna like add another one right there because I feel like it needs one. So you can just kind of keep going. Obviously, I think it's pretty obvious. And then when you are done, you're gonna bake it again when you're happy with it, just like you baked your first version, and then it is ready to start working with. So not hard, right? I don't think so hard. I did find a woman reached out to me. Her name is Rosalind Hill. She is in the UK, and she has been building 2 latch I-cord tools to do easy crochet, and I'll give you her website below, because she has like some ebooks and YouTube videos for kind of these like pretty simple crochet projects for kids using 2 latch tools. I think not 3 latch tools. I did think somebody asked about if I did a 4 latch. I haven't tried a 4 latch yet, but there's like no reason not to. The sky is the limit. It's really hard to stop playing with these once I get going with it. So I am going to set this all aside, and then I want to show you how I start and end an I-cord for those of you that have been wondering about them. So first, I guess let's end this one, because that makes sense, because it's on there. And bear with me, this is just how I have figured out how to end something. I don't think I'd ever be able to send these out with Lola's Choice kits, because I'm not a manufacturer. I'm a maker, crafter, crazy lady. I'll get obsessed with something else next. But when I think for the next Lola's Choice, I will design something one could do with an I-cord tool if one wants to, or with your knitting needles, because why not? Okay, so here we are. We've got our nice rock. For those of you who know about nice from last March, you know what I'm talking about. I couldn't believe I posted a video of this guy on Instagram, not yesterday, but the day before, and nobody got my joke that it was an I-cord tool. And I was just disappointed in humanity that day, I'm going to say. So let's say that you are done with your I-cord and you want to finish it. The way that I have figured out how to do that is to take the first loop. I'm going to get this little extra floof off there. The first loop off of the outside hook and put it onto the middle needle. And then either you could finish off those 2 loops and then do the second one, or you can do all 3. So I'm just going to finish off those 2. So what I've done is wrapped my yarn around the middle loop. I'm closing my latch, and then I'm pushing those 2 loops over. And now I am going to take just the loop on this outside cord, put it on to the middle, bring it all the way to the back, wrap the yarn around, and pull that through. And then I remembered scissors today, which makes me very proud of myself. I am going to cut my yarn and then just pull that all the way through, and your I-cord is finished and quite tidy. The other way to do that is to take both of the loops from the outside and put them on the middle and wrap the yarn once and pull it through. That works as well. It's maybe like a little bit more tapered, and this one's a little bit more rounded because you're doing it in 2 rows instead of 1 row. It's just like knitting. I can tell you guys are like making funny jokes in the comments, and I'm trying not to look because I'm so easily distractible. Okay. So for casting on, this took me a little while to figure out how to cast on in a way that I enjoyed. And oh, what I didn't tell you about this guy is he has some pretty interesting needles that were sent to me from a latch hook manufacturer in Japan called Weave Harissa. And they sent me a package of a bunch of different hooks. Some are smaller, some are bigger, some are kind of this standard gauge. They do this one really interesting one that has a handle that's like a single latch hook that I feel like you could do some kind of embellishment on a piece of knitting just with a latch hook, and I kind of want to play with that. I think it's more for machine knitting, and the shaft of the hook is a little bit long, so I'm going to chat with them and see what we could do. But these were kind of cool because they didn't have a bump out on the end for going into a knitting machine, so they just fit right into my little nice guy so well. So if I want to start, the way that I like to start is so that there isn't a knot at the beginning. Because I've seen some where you like make an overhand knot like this and then you kind of have that little knot right there. But I wanted to figure out a way to not have the knot. So get it? Not have a knot. So I hold my tail this way and my working yarn this way. And I go over that outside hook, underneath the middle hook, and then over the third hook. And then I bring my yarn all the way over the 3 hooks. And now I need to hold both of those yarns pretty tensely in my hand for this to work. And now you can see I'm flipping the latch just on the first and third hook. And I'm pushing my yarn over the first, and I'm pushing my yarn over the third, and then pulling those loops all the way back. And they're quite tight, so it's a little harder to work when those loops are tight. And then I'm gonna bring my yarn again over all of those hooks, and then I'm gonna slide, but I'm really tight right now. So it's actually a little bit easier to do this first one with your hand going over than with trying to manipulate them. And then you'll see as I come back that I'm trying to keep this as loose as possible. So the trick to have success with the cord is that these loops not be too tight, because it's hard to move them if they're too tight. So then I will just continue around just like that. And it doesn't matter which way you're wrapping, you just kind of want to continue to wrap in the same direction as you get going. So just like that, you can see I'm coming off the last loop and then working it through, and I'll just continue going just like that. So I think if you want to watch that in the future, you'll see it's a little tight at the start, but the bigger I get those loops, the easier it is, the smoother it's going to go, but also the looser my I-cord is going to be. So there's kind of a rubric there for how loose your I-cord is and how easy it is. These needles don't flex as much as the needles that I showed you that we just built those I-cord tools with. So those will be a little bit looser for you. Yeah, that was a little tight right there. But there's your I-cord, all built and ready to go. So that is, let me see if I did everything I said that I was going to do. I think I talked about that all. So excellent. I will look and see if there's any questions once I get through the rest of the live. We'll kind of do all questions at once. I've been talking for 50 minutes. I'm going to have a drink of something. Oh, this is so well timed. Guess what it's time to talk about? The Knit for Food Knit-a-thon, which I don't even want to cover that with my hand. It's just seltzer, I promise. So the Knit for Food Knit-a-thon is a 12-hour knitting marathon. This is our 4th annual Knit for Food Knit-a-thon. This year it is on Saturday, March 23rd from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Last year we raised $340,000, and I am hopeful this year that we are going to blow that out of the water. One of the reasons I think we did so well last year is we had more public meetups than ever before. And this year we actually already have more public meetups registered than I've ever seen registered before for the Knit-a-thon. So I'm very, very excited about that. I actually have like a little towel here to wipe off my hands while I'm talking to you, because that polymer clay gets kind of sticky on them and I want to get it off before I get it everywhere. So I hope that you will join us and raise funds. This works just like any other marathon, fundraising marathon that you would sign up for and say that you are going to be running, a mile or a marathon or whatever, and get your friends and family to sponsor you. It is exactly the same idea, but with knitting for 12 hours. Of course, we would not expect that you would knit for 12 hours. You could crochet, you could make I-cord, you could quilt, you could sew, whatever it is that you want to do, but it should be something where it's challenging you a little bit. Now, an important piece about the Knit for Food Knit-a-thon is that 100% of the funds raised are donated between 4 organizations that are operating in the hunger and food insecurity area. They are Feeding America, World Central Kitchen, Meals on Wheels, and No Kid Hungry. So those 4 organizations are the same organizations that we have been fundraising for since the start of Knit for Food. All 4 of them do absolutely incredible work, and I am honored to fundraise for them with you. So I hope that you will think about joining us. I do think that Max figured out a way for us to see how much we have raised so far, and we have 4 weeks to go, and we have raised $80,000, 215. So this is what the fundraising page looks like. You will see that number climbing. When we get to our first goal of $123,000, that means we will have raised $1 million to fight hunger and food insecurity. It is truly a phenomenal day. And one of the things I want to talk to you about that day is, besides the public meetups that are happening, we do have a Zoom, and that Zoom will be happening in the morning from about 10 to 12, and then in the evening from about 5 to 10, with like a break in there somewhere so that people running the Zoom can like get off camera for a second. And in that time, we will be hearing from the 4 organizations that we are fundraising for. I have a meeting with World Central Kitchen next week. I'm going to talk to you about an idea we have with them in a second. We have Ellie Hollander, who is the CEO from Meals on Wheels, is actually going to speak to us, which is very exciting. She is really thrilled about the work that we've all been doing and asked if she could be the one to present Meals on Wheels work with us, which I'm very excited to hear from her. I'm working on getting the possibility of streaming a documentary about World Central Kitchen during the Zoom. We'll have some yoga classes, we'll have some ergonomics, we'll listen to music together. We're going to have a very fun game night with Patty Lyons. So we try to keep you all entertained, but I'm trying to leave like those afternoon hours free for you maybe to go out and knit in public or meet friends and like drum up donations. I am going to put a file up with all of our logos and assets for coasters, so that if you're going somewhere and you want to get some coasters printed to bring with you, that is an option. All of the registered public meetups, I just ordered a ton of coasters, and I'm going to be reaching out to all the people who've registered meetups to see if they want some coasters for their event, because I think that's kind of like a fun way to like put your glass down somewhere, soak up the sweat on the glass, and have the website right there so you can plug that into your phone and donate to the cause. Every year we come up with new ideas for Knit for Food. And one of the ideas that we're working on in the meeting next week with World Central Kitchen, and I forgot to bring their book with me, I have it downstairs, I meant to run it down and get it, is they came out with a cookbook last fall that is a really incredible kind of testament to the work that World Central Kitchen does around the world. And then it collects recipes that they've cooked for each of those like humanitarian crises or disasters. So it's a really interesting cookbook just in terms of like the ethnicities that are represented in the book, and then the stories from the chefs who were cooking those meals. And we're going to try to find some way of either everybody choosing a recipe and then cooking it together for the knit-a-thon, or maybe like in the weeks leading up to it, to just kind of like, then you can post a photo of your meal that you cooked as a way of kind of telling your friends and family about the knit-a-thon that you're doing and the work that World Central Kitchen does. I think it's interesting as somebody who creates content that is for sale, like knitting patterns or kits, it's very easy to talk about something that's fresh and new, and it gets a little harder to promote things that have already been out for a while. So I think one of the services we could do for World Central Kitchen is help kind of give them a fresh thing to like talk about and focus on for the cookbook, which has been out for like 9 or 10 months. So I'm hoping that we help them sell a bunch of books and get people excited about the recipes in there. So I am going to look in a moment for questions, because I just saw that somebody asked about Knit for Food, and I definitely want to make sure that I answer that. So those are kind of all plans. I'm just going to read a few questions. Does anybody have this cookbook? The previews have a lot of meat in them. Wondering if there are meatless recipes too. Mo, I do have the cookbook, and they give options to turn everything into vegetarian. But what I would suggest about the cookbook is see if your library has it, or ask your library to get it and then take it out. And that's a really great way to like preview a cookbook without purchasing it if you're not sure you want to add it to your full collection. I've never done Knit for Food. Do people ask friends and family to donate, for example, on a Facebook post? Exactly, Karen. So you sign up, you commit to fundraising, and then you get a link, and then you share that link with your friends and family. And what's really great about being knitters is we have all knit for people in our families and our friends before. So it's pretty easy to go to those people you've knit a hat for and say, hey, remember that hat I knit for you? Like, might be a few strands of yarn attached to that. Would you, donate for my effort in knitting for 12 hours to raise money for hunger and food insecurity? We send out an onboarding email to you when you sign up that gives you like ideas for language, and then make sure you understand how everything works. I send out weekly emails to get you excited with like tips and tricks for fundraising. One fundraising idea. Oh, how do you sign up? Go to www.knitforfood.com. We got the URL last year, so that makes life easy. I also think if you Google Knit for Food Knit-a-thon, we will pop right up. It is on the homepage of my website, which is nelkindesigns.com. We make it very easy to find. And I'll have that link below. Today, I noticed that Nicole Wagner, she's been doing the Knit-a-thon all 4 years, posted a proposal for her donors. So if you donate in Nicole's name, she will knit you a gnome. And depending on how much you donate, that dictates the size of the gnome that she is going to knit you. So I donated to her right away because I have loved the gnomes that Nicole has knit for a very long time. And now I'm going to get a gnome from Nicole. I'm hoping that it maybe has a little thong. I'm hoping it's in the Knit for Food colors. I'm going to put them right on Gold, or her or they. I'm not quite sure about the gender of my gnome yet. I will put them right here on Goldie's shoulder, and that will be with me during the Knit-a-thon. So she knows I'm hoping I get it before the Knit-a-thon date so that I have it on set with me. Okay. So that is the Knit for Food Knit-a-thon. I will look for questions again before we finish up. In terms of travel, I always talk about my travel with you. And I did go to New York City the other weekend. I kind of talked about it in a Facebook post, so I don't need to like go back over the whole thing again. But I did go see Hadestown, and it was the second night that Ani DeFranco was in it. And I've seen Ani DeFranco perform since I was in my late teens, early 20s, and she was phenomenal. It is so fun to see an artist who you've kind of like grown up with stretch themselves and do new things. And she was great. She sang, she danced, she had character, she had persona. She was totally Persephone. I wished I had like read a little bit of a libretto about Hadestown before I went, because I didn't know the story super well. But I loved it. And then the other performer who was in it was Lola Tung, who was in The Summer I Turned Pretty. So I was texting my friend whose daughter had turned me into The Summer Who Turned Pretty. And Carmen was like freaking out that I got to see Lola Tung perform in a musical. It was fire. I really enjoyed it. So that's the only travel I've done. I am going to Florida in March to help my parents out a little bit. I am looking forward to some sun and palm trees and knitting at the pool and helping them out with a few things. And then in terms of adventures for the future year, I do a few trips with knitters throughout the year. I am taking a group to Ireland in September, to Spain in November, and then on a cruise from Buenos Aires to Chile in March. And the cruise and the Spain trip are totally full, and the Ireland, Aran Islands trip has 2 more spots in it. So if you were on the fence about that, know that it is almost full. What makes a trip full is how many knitters we can have in classes. So we've got like a cap of 25 knitters, and when we hit that number of 25 knitters, that is what makes a trip full. For the cruise, it's how many people we can fit on a bus. That's kind of what makes those trips full. So that's just a little bit about that. You all know that I love to sew, and I don't get to sew as much as I want, but I joined a group of friends for a sew along of the Oxbow tote locally, and I'll kind of like go back. So the Oxbow tote is, I made the larger size. It is a pattern by Noodlehead, and it is designed to be like a big travel bag. So my thought is this will fit on top of my suitcase, and my purse can actually fit inside of it, so that I only have 2 bags, like my carry-on suitcase and this, when I get on the plane. I used a washable canvas on the inside. It's got pockets on the inside, like a smaller one and a bigger one. It has a big pocket on the outside. The bottom and the pocket is a wax canvas, which is pretty sturdy and gives it a nice base. And then I have to fix that zipper a little bit. It's not bringing me joy. There we go. Got it. And then the fabric that I used, I bought when I was in Finland a few years ago at the Marimekko outlet, and I had been saving it for something special, and I'm so glad that I saved it for this. And then I actually think like the piece de la resistance of this bag is on the back. I made a second pocket, but I cut it short. And this actually fits onto my suitcase so that I can slide it onto my suitcase and then just like roll my suitcase around the airport. And I think this is going to hold a ton of stuff. I did bring it with me to New York City, and it was my only bag for New York City. I had like a little backpack and that. And I didn't follow something in the pattern where it said to like sew a bunch of times back and forth where these little D-rings are hooked right here. I just did like once or twice, and she was like, you might want to reinforce that. And one of them ripped out on me after I shoved it full of fabric at Mood, and it was like as full as it could possibly be. So last week I took it apart, like you can undo the lining at the bottom, and I went in there and I sewed over that canvas at the D-ring like 800 times. So it is not going anywhere. It is the Oxbow tote by Noodlehead. Again, I'll put a link below once the live is over. But it's a fun sew. She has tutorials that you can watch ahead, as before you sew. I watched them before. They help you decide on like fabrics. So some of the fabrics I used meant I didn't have to use as much interfacing, which made some of the steps a little bit faster, and I'm very happy with it. It was a good winter project to do, and I think I'll be using it for a long time. In terms of like listening and reading and watching, I know that some of you really love this section of my lives. I have been yammering for a while. This has been a very good therapy session. Are you guys having a good therapy session with me? I hope so. Listening. I was waiting for The Women by Kristin Hannah to come out, and it did not disappoint. It definitely could have disappointed, because I never like wait for a book to come out on its release date and then download it and start listening to it. And I did that with The Women. It is about a young woman who goes to Vietnam as a nurse in I think it's called a platoon. Sorry, I don't know my military language so well. After her brother died overseas at Vietnam. And then she does 2 tours there and comes back and has a lot of trauma from being in Vietnam, and is basically told by all the vets that she runs into that she's not a vet because there were no women in Vietnam, because nurses didn't like see active combat. And she certainly had trauma from it. I hope I didn't give too much away with that. I really suggest either listening to it or reading it at some point. I think it's a worthy story. Kristin Hannah is very good at taking a subject that is based on true life stories and working historical fiction around that and educating about a time and place, and also spinning a really good tale. But it was heavy. It was deep and real, as the subject of Vietnam War is. So I would suggest that. I am about to start listening to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and that is for a book group. I joined 2 book groups in the last 6 months that I'm very happy about, both of them. They're getting me kind of reading, but also talking about books a little bit more, which I've missed doing. Reading, actual book, not listening. I am reading a book I love called The Island of Sea Women, and that is for my other book group, and that's by Lisa C. And that is about the Korean island of Jeju, and it is about a cooperative of women divers. It's about 2 young girls who become part of this cooperative of female divers who are they're the ones that are in charge of feeding their families and earning income for the families, and the husbands stay home and take care of the kids. And it starts I would say 1930s and ends up present day, and kind of goes back and forth in time a little bit. So it goes through the occupation of Japan on the island, and then World War II, and then the Korean War. I haven't quite gotten up to the Korean War yet. I'm still in that World War II time, and then present day. And I would highly suggest that book as well if you haven't already read it. I think I read one of Lisa C's other books years ago, but it's been a minute. And I'm so glad. I wouldn't have found that one without my book group. And that is the goal of book groups. And I will say that the last book group I went to, I didn't read the book, and then I got COVID. So that is karma. And I am going to always read the book from now on, or not go, because clearly that has to happen. In terms of watching, I've been watching a fair amount in the evening. I haven't really been getting to sit down and watch something until 9:30 or 10 at night, but I've been really enjoying Death and Other Details on Hulu. That is about a kind of fancy cruise liner. It's a murder mystery. It's very stylized. The costuming is great. That's very dramatic. And that one is coming out an episode at a time, and I'm definitely watching them as soon as they come out. I'm also loving Feud, Capote versus the Swans. That's another very stylized drama about Truman Capote and some elite socialites in New York City, and the drama between them. And the acting is crazy and over the top, and the costuming is great, and Truman Capote is a drunk, and that's been a really fun watch. And also, I stumbled across Faraway Downs with Nicole Kidman on Hulu that I'd never heard of. I guess it was a movie called Australia that I've never seen. And they took a bunch of footage from that and kind of did a mini series. I think it came out in November on Hulu. And I just stumbled across it and I loved it. I ended up devouring it and staying up too late over the weekend watching that. So that was a fun one. I've never been to Australia, but now I feel like I've been there a tiny bit. And finally, for Valentine's Day last week, there were a bunch of kind of love story stuff, and I stumbled across something called One Day. I don't know the name of the actors and actresses in it. I watched it pretty quickly while I was knitting on step outs for Lola's Choice, and it's very sad, but also well done. So, and there's some alcohol struggles in there, and that's another one to suggest. Finally, before I ask you if you have any questions in terms of eating, we do eat. Someone was asking me how I get so much done in a day, if I have 30 hours in my day. And one of the ways I do is I've not been cooking so much. I kind of cook once a week or twice a week. I tend to make a bunch of eggs on top of something. But I did find on Instagram, and I'll give you the link below, this kind of salad that was kind of like a protein bomb. And it had, a can of rinsed chickpeas in it, a container of pearl mozzarella balls, little mozzarella balls. It had a bunch of either chicken meat or turkey meat. If you eat meat in there, you could kind of put that in there. It had some basil, it had some tomatoes, and then like olive oil and balsamic vinegar and a little salt and pepper. They also put Italian seasoning in, but I skipped that. So it was like this really kind of like dense, yummy salad. And then we served it just on top of some lettuce with some like pine nuts on top and then like a little more vinegar. And I loved it. We actually ate it faster than I was hoping that we would, because I would have been happy to have it in the fridge for a few more days. And I totally want to make it again. It was so easy. And I find I'm really satisfied by food when there's a lot of protein in it. So the times I make a mistake when I don't have like enough protein when I'm eating and I'm not kind of like satisfied. So that's my little protein nutshell. I am looking down at the comments now to see if you have any questions. And then I think that it would be really fun for me to do the giveaway for this live. I didn't do a giveaway on the last live, but I feel like I want to do a giveaway for like one of the I-cord tools that I just made with you. So once this live is over, I'll give you the prompt right before we're done, and you'll want to leave your comment to potentially win this I-cord tool not in this like live chat, but below in the video. And then the next time that we have a live, I will announce the winner of the I-cord tool we just made together. So that's pretty fun. Do I see any questions? I'm kind of like zhuzhing through. Oh, Lady Tan Circle, right, was one of the ones that Lisa C. This is always really fun to do. I'm not seeing that many questions. Thank you for putting the link in, Susie, for Knit for Food. That is really great. I see people are asking how to sign up. And someone was asking if I ever made the I-cord tool with Tunisian and crochet hook. And no, I've not. I've just used those latch hooks for it. I'm pretty new to this. So going through, I'm seeing if I see any other questions, and I don't see any. So hopefully I got to them all. I don't see Max here yet, so I might have to keep talking until he shows up. I'm not sure if I can end this without him. Let me see if I can. I'm just texting him. Oh, what's the name of my cowl? It is called Cowlstruck. Oh, I hear him coming back. It's called Cowlstruck. So thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you showing up, asking great questions, following me down these crazy little crafting rabbit holes that I find every so often. I will be back with some knitting tips in the next live. I think you'll see that I'm about to teach you so much in the next Lola's Choice pattern, and that we're going to be talking about that for a little while. Kitja wants to know if there will be new kits soon. So I just released low lanyard kits in my shop, and then also beta cuffs, and there will be some more bling tee kits posted pretty soon, probably within the next 2 weeks. And that kind of thing, if you're on my newsletter is where you find out when I have new kits to release. I always say things first, and I typically give newsletter people a kind of special discount for putting up with all of my emails. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video so that YouTube likes me and shows me to more people. You know how to play along with me. Oh, and your prompt. Tell me name ideas that have to do with like waves or undulating for this new sweater, because baby's gonna need a name before I can release her. And the winner will be chosen in the next live, and that will be for this I-cord tool. Thank you so much. Happy knitting. I hope you guys got a lot of knitting done tonight. I got a lot of therapy. Feeling good. Ready to get back to work. Love you.